Right. Well, and speaking of that, estate planning and end of life planning, as you know, is not a one-time thing. It's a continual process and relationship. And I think one of the biggest things that I've seen is um, aging parents not being very frank with their adult children and not having those conversations with them of here's what's going to happen when I pass. Because speaking about death is so taboo, we avoid it at all costs. We all share some discomfort. So therefore we avoid not only planning for ourselves, but also having those frank conversations about what our wishes are and who we are going to appoint to take over affairs after the loved one has passed away. And I've seen countless times and worked with clients where they're fighting over the stuff that has been left behind after the loved one has passed away because the parent wasn't proactive and telling people, hey, this is what you're going to get, this is what you're going to get, and these are my wishes. And whether you like it or not, this is what I want. And, not only in your will, but your memorial wishes. I had a client last summer her father didn't have a will and did not share that he wanted to be cremated. And that caused a lot of family issues. So not only with the financial and the legal, but with your memorial wishes and your legacy wishes. So I've seen countless times how just having that conversation, even though it can be awkward and uncomfortable, it's a conversation worth having.
Could I just jump in also with just some practical things? Let's just assume that you've had the conversation, your parents on board.
So that is a big assumption.
But let's just say you got there. So what actually do? You go over to their house, ideally, if the pandemic allows, and you ask them if they could show you their statements, and you start making lists. This is where the money is. This is what they have. You take your power of attorney, you get it on file at perhaps their main financial institutions, as well as the insurance company, as in medical insurance and Medicare. These are things that you'll be so glad that you took care of that. And of course, you're going to ask them, as Craig was speaking about, you're going to ask to review their legal documents, their wills and powers of attorney. And if they are outdated, they should absolutely go be reviewed by their attorney and be updated. And when it comes to a power of attorney, our experience, I don't know how the law is different everywhere, and banking institutions tend to do what they want to do. This is my experience of working with banks, in that even if the power of attorney names the person you want to name and it's a good, it's a good appointment, etc., it's just too old for them and they don't want to accept it, and they're going to give you a hard time, and you may have to get a lawyer involved there, and that's costly. So the idea of trying to make these things easier, hopefully less costly, you won't need to interject with have lawyers come in and have to have costly litigation that will, in order to do something that they could have solved more easily. And that gets also to the issue of capacity. If your parents seem like they are slipping, look at those documents, because if any change needs to be made, it needs to be made before they lose capacity, because after that, you're going to be into guardianship and conservatorship, and that's a costly and difficult process. And so again, looking at those legal documents early and making sure that everybody knows who's appointed and whether or not that's what they intended.